A teacher asks a student, "What is it that keeps a tiger within a cage?" The student replies by saying, "Teacher, surely it is the bars that keeps a tiger within a cage." The teacher shakes his head and says, "Again, what is it that keeps a tiger within a cage?" The student ponders it even longer and he says, "Surely, teacher, it has to be the bars that keeps a tiger within a cage." The teacher shakes his head and looks at the student and lowers his voice and said, "My student, it is not the bars that keeps the tiger within a cage, but rather the space between the bars that keeps the tiger within the cage." And we've been taught to think that we are in a cage, a mental cage. And that cage prevents us from being able to do certain things that we most certainly can achieve. And so I want to talk to you about a few things. I'd like to start by drawing your attention to the overhead projector. And we're going to be talking about the basics of your mind. Thought is energy. Active thought is active energy. Concentrated thought is a concentrated energy. Thought concentrated on a definite purpose becomes power. Now, I remember coming into this basic understanding as a small child growing up. At the time, I had no idea that I was being introduced to a certain principle that I would later use in life. The way I came into this understanding was, as a small boy, I used to have a magnifying glass. And on one particular day, I realized that I could use that magnifying glass and I could take the energy and the rays from the sun, project it through that magnifying glass, hone it, concentrate it to the point where the light actually became power. I would hone the rays from the sun to a fine point, to a laser point, much like we can do with our minds. What I would do with that magnifying glass is I would use it for defiant purposes. I can remember burning ants and burning bugs. That's me right there. I can remember burning leaves, burning paper, a number of things that I would do upon learning that I could focus and concentrate the energy from the sun on a definite purpose and I could create a fire. So what I want to talk to you about is the mind and the different modes of the mind. The operations of the mind are produced by two parallel modes of activity. One, the conscious mind, and the other, the subconscious mind. Now, when we're talking about the conscious mind, we know that it is the center of perception, analysis, judgment. It operates through the five physical senses, through the sight, through the touch, taste, smell, and so forth. To give an example, consciously, I give my mind an input or a suggestion, and I could raise my right arm. When we're talking about the subconscious mind, besides its work on the mental plane, it controls the regular functions and the vital organs and everything else that has to do with keeping life possible for us as human beings. Now, this is a subjective aspect. The conscious mind is the objective aspect. When we're talking about the difference between the two, the conscious mind is right now what we're all doing. If I were to ask you, Linda, to raise your left arm, it wouldn't be much of a problem because you can dictate what you do consciously. But if I were to ask someone in here to stop your heart from beating, that basically gives you an indication of what the subconscious mind is governing within your body. Now, the subconscious mind is under the government of a power and intelligence far superior than we could ever be. It works when you're asleep, it works right now, and it constantly is in command with keeping your bodily organs functioning properly because it is attached to the part of us, the part of our being, that is connected to the universal intelligence and the divine mind. Now, why is that so important? It's very important because the conscious mind can subject the subconscious mind to impressions, to thoughts, to ideas. So if we're talking about the basics of the mind, we need to understand why it's very important to monitor and to guard against what we allow into our conscious mind. The conscious mind serves as what I like to consider the watchman at the gate. And the reason why the watchman at the gate is so crucial is because the way we are developed, the way we are designed, when I have what's called a predominant mental attitude, whatever I think about the most, the ideas that I cherish and hold, if I allow those concepts, if I allow those beliefs to make it within my subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind is the aspect of us that is creating all the time based upon those innermost feelings and those desires. If we allow such things as doubt, fear, worry, if we allow the conscious mind, which is the watchman at the gate, to allow these thoughts into the subconscious mind, we know that the conscious mind can direct the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind does not engage in the process of proving. It relies upon the conscious mind to guard against mistaken impressions. So the conscious mind says, I'm afraid. That thought then goes into my subconscious, and my subconscious starts to manifest from that. It starts to create from that fear. So it's very important that we allow ourselves to constantly be on guard of what we're thinking. Because the thought, if it's concentrated, it becomes power. It becomes focused, and it starts to materialize in our lives. The subconscious mind is just like the earth. If I decided I wanted to plant apple seeds, and I planted those apple seeds within the earth can't ask me, are you sure you want apple seed? How about oranges? Or how about a pear tree? It doesn't have the ability. It simply takes what I give it, and it manifests and it produces from what I give it. So we have to always make certain that we're the watchman at the gate, and any time we feel that we're having ideas or thoughts that are not consistent with what we want to see manifested in our lives, then we have to immediately create a counter-suggestion. And how do we do that? Through the use of affirmations. And we know that affirmations are basically, the root is firm. We have a firm idea, we have a firm belief, we have something that we know for certain is concrete that we want to hold on to. And through strong counter-suggestions, frequently repeated, the mind has to accept it. We tell ourselves things constantly, repeatedly. We become what we hear ourselves say we are. What we think about most becomes our reality. And so what has to happen is we have to be aware as the watchman of when we're getting thoughts and ideas that are not consistent with what it is we'd like to see manifested. And that is through the use of affirmations. Now that which we do over and over becomes mechanical or habit. We know that for a fact, right? I can remember growing up learning to drive a stick shift. And in the moment it was very difficult for me because there were so many things I had to do. I had to know where the gears were in relation to the stick. I had to know the mechanics of driving a stick shift. I had to know when to let off the gas, when to put on the clutch, when to shift. And I had to do all this in a seamless type of motion in order to get the vehicle to move properly. Now, needless to say, it was very difficult in the earlier stages. Car cut off on me several times. Very bumpy, rough ride. God forbid I were on a deep slope.
Right.
And I can remember what I would do is I would practice. I continue to practice. Because I know now, today, that the subconscious mind is a seat of habit. And anytime I do something over and over and over and over, anytime I give myself suggestions repeatedly and repeatedly, then they then become a part of my being. They become a part of me, the habitual part of me that no longer needs to rely upon the conscious mind. After several months of learning to drive a stick, you could find me driving down the street at any given moment, eating, talking on the phone, and shifting. Because I no longer needed to rely upon the conscious mind for that particular function. It became habit. The same holds true with your thoughts. When we tell ourselves something repeatedly, it then becomes a part of our habits. It then becomes a part of how we normally function. I have this adage that says, if you sow a thought, you'll reap an action. If you sow an action, you'll reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. And it all starts with a thought. Your thoughts determine and predict your destiny.